So what we have going on here is how to join a steel wired armoured cable. This one is 10mm. You've got to make it watertight and everything like that, and it's got to be a good join because steel wired armour is normally outside, and yeah, it's got to be a good connection because it's normally drawing quite a decent load. So on this 10mm, what we're going to do is use one of these resin joints where basically you make the ends off, not into a gland, but into the actual connection block and fill it with resin. And for these resin joints, you do need to make off the armoured, similar the way you would for doing a gland. You just basically take off the braiding around it and do it the same with a hacksaw or with that little stripping tool I've got there. And this armoured slice, yes, it's good, but the blades don't last forever. I find that I am doing it the right way around, I know that much. I've checked it out a few times, but the blades don't last forever. That's probably why it comes with 5 or 6 blades attached to it. And you've got to undo it. Like, it's a bit of a ball ache that you've got to undo it every time to take it off. It should be a bit easier, maybe a quick release, something like that. So after that, expose the actual armoured cable by getting your Stanley out and chopping it off basically. And if you've done armour before, you know, just to give it a good snap back and forth, just to get that the braiding off, because you want to get it nice and neat. If it's not coming off nice and neat, it's always a bit of a nightmare. So you want to get it off nice and neat so it goes into that resin joint perfect. And yes, do both ends. Luckily on this cable, I'm basically replacing a 10 metre length because the gardener's damaged one of the cables. So rather than replacing it all, I'm just replacing the last 10 metres and I'm joining it on with this resin joint. And then this is a resin joint pack which I'm using. And these are roughly around 20-30 quid. And they do certain size cables, and this one does, I think, up to 16mm cables you can get in there, which will be tight. And it comes with the kit inside. It comes with a little earth strap, so you can continuously carry on the earth for the armoured braiding on the steel wired armoured. It comes with instructions too, but once you've read the instructions, you've read them 100 times sort of thing, so I don't really follow them too much. And you've got your resin joint in there with some gloves, because if you get this resin on your hands, it doesn't want to come off. It's a bleeding nightmare. So first things what I want to do is get this earth strap across. So I'm going to put it onto one end. So yeah, empty it out the pack, and yeah, I wish I didn't do that because they fall through that bleeding decking, but I get them out. So you basically measure it up. These, you want to get it to go in there nice and tight. Yes, I probably should have went to the van and got the hacksaw, but I just cut them with a Stanley knife, because the tighter seal that you get on these ends, it will obviously stop the resin flowing out the end. Because I don't know, I've never done one where you don't get it on your bleeding hands or get it everywhere, get it a mess. So it just does go everywhere before it obviously dries when you're tipping it into the resin joint. But this is what I want to do first. I want to get it all preparation done sort of thing and ready, so I can put it all together in a oneer, really, so I don't have to faff around. And yeah, it looks a bit like it's been chewed off, but it does the trick. It's going underground, no one's going to see it, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, I've just cut it off with the like snips just to get them off there, so it sits on nice and tight on the cable once I clip the whole lot back together, which you'll see later on. And yes, I'm going to do the lid as well, because the lid's got the same amount of sort of where you can fit in all different size armoured and all different size cable. Like it says on the box, you can use this joint for up to 6mm cable to 16mm cable. I think 16mm cable would be a bit harder to get in. Like it is, any bigger the cable is, like say 25mm armoured cable, it's a nightmare to work with. I don't think you'd use this sort of joint to do 25mm, but there we go. It's like a plastic casing that will fit together once it's all ready to be sealed in. So then now I'm just going to get the actual cores out, which I'm going to join together, and I'm just slowly, well, gently marking that with a Stanley knife so I can just peel it off. That is how I sort of want to do this. So you want to get this sheathing off so you can get to the cores which you're going to connect. And this wasn't installed that long ago, well, 2004 when the new colours come out, but they are brown, black and grey as well, the same as the cable which I bought to extend it. And I do know that some people, they put like earth sleeving on and blue for neutral to identify these cables inside the joints. I don't see any point whatsoever. This cable, it hasn't got any sleeving on the middle of it anyway, so I'm not going to put any sleeving on to identify the live neutral and the earth inside the joint. I don't see there's any point. So like you would on a armoured cable where you're doing it off into a gland, you get a little bit of that ready so you can put the earth strap. Basically, this is a bit of earth strap that will take the armoured continuous, so you can still use that as the earth as well, because you want the earth to be continuous all the way through. And then what I'm doing here is putting a bit of tape on it. Not taping the earth strap on because that would be stupid, but I want to hold it in place, because you'll see why in a bit with the little spring that you put on there. It goes really tight and it moves it around, and the last thing you want to do is have to pull it on and off. So stick a bit of tape around it to start with to hold it in place, because that's going to help once you put the little spring-loaded clip on. This is a little spring-loaded clip. It's nice and tight, and yeah, it can pinch your hand, so watch out. But once you get it going on round there, keep twisting it round to get it nice and tight, and this will clamp that earth onto the armoured cable, onto the armoured sheathing. So then it can help the continuous earth be going through the resin joint basically. And then just to hold it all in place, I like to put a bit of insulation tape around it as well. Why not cover it up? This is to hold it all in place so it doesn't slip around, because that it can, if you get it caught on something, it can slip off. It's quite tight on there, but I like to use a taper which it comes with. And in this little packet there's 4 connectors, because it also caters for 4-core cable, so you can use 4-core cable in there as well. But what it's got is a little Allen key that comes with it. They're like small little joining clamps, and they've got 4 little grub screws on there, so you can undo them and tighten your cable down each end to obviously join it. But even though it's underground and you're not going to see it too much, I like to try and get it as neat as possible. One reason is so it doesn't push the box to bits whilst that resin's in there. Because yes, in my earlier years, I've done it before where it's a bit tight. I've bent around in there. It looked a bleeding mess, and it pops the joint to bits, and that bleeding resin goes everywhere. So just for now, I'm just going to tie this back with a bit of tape out the way so I can get this in there nice and neat to make my life as easy as possible, because it's hard enough to work with. I know it's only 10 mil. Some boys work with 25, 35 mils, 50 mil, 90 mil sometimes. But yeah, I'm just trying to make it easy as possible. So I stagger the cuts, like where you cut the live, the neutral and the earth. Stagger them so they're not all clumped up in one area. And then what I did, have a quick look inside that little joint to see how much I actually wanted to strip off, because I want to get as much as possible to the joint so it clamps on nice and tight. So what I first do here is just put it on and just tighten it up, like sort of just finger tight with the Allen key to start with, until I get the other end in. So basically put the other end in, clamp that up sort of finger tight as well, and then switch the Allen key to its side so you get more leverage. And as I was taught as an apprentice, I tighten it up FT. And if you know what that means, drop it down in the comments. A few people might know what that means, but yeah, I get it nice and tight as I can basically, after I switch that Allen key around and use it, because you've got a bit more leverage. You don't want to do it too much, because the last thing you want to do is round it off, or you're more likely to snap the Allen key before you round it off. But get it as tight as possible, because end of the day it's going to be in there forever and under the ground, so you ain't going to be able to get to it once it's buried. And then for that added bit of insulation, I'll stick a bit of tape around it as well. Yes, I would recommend sticking tape around them, because at the end of the day, they're inside, they're quite close together in there. So yes, you want to put a bit of tape around them, even though you will spread them out before you put the resin in. I just like the idea of putting a bit of tape round the joints to insulate them that little bit more. And now what we want to do is get that earth strap across. Do not forget it, otherwise the continuity of the earth on the braiding of the Armoured is not going to bell out. It's not going to be any good. It'll basically, you'll know there's a joint in it somewhere, and it just basically get that earth strap on. It's going to make it a lot better and a lot neater, and basically like new. And the earth strap does come with a green sleeving over it, so you will need to cut a little bit off. Don't just strap it on there with nothing, because obviously it will do no good. So you've got to cut a bit of it off, so the metal braiding inside that earth strap connects onto the steel wired Armour, basically. And with this one, it's a little bit long. So what I'm going to do, fold it over for a double amount. I'm not going to bother cutting it, there's no point. But again, I'm going to tape it in place before I put that spring on. Because if you've never played with these springs are a little bit of a nightmare. Look at that, it's a little bit long, so I'm bending it over just so I can make use of it, really. And then bend that little spring round again. And the more you bend it round and round and round, it just gets nice and tight. It does its own thing. It tightens up. Once it's all on, it's not really coming off. And again, make use of that tape you got. Put plenty of tape around it. And now for the time to get it in the casing, which is going to be under the ground. And once you lay it in this casing, make sure you get it in the position where you want to put the casing on, because then it'll fit nice and neat, like you can see on there at the end. And spread the cores out as much as you can. You don't want them tight, you don't want them touching or anything like that. Just spread them out as much as you can. Use the room that you've got inside this joint. Basically, spread them out a little bit. And with this sort of cable, this is a 10mm from 16 to 6. Yeah, they're quite hard cores and they're not flexy. So once you bend them and when you put the resin in, they're going to stay in that position, basically apart from each other. So this is where you get the lid and it just clips onto place. Get it nice and tight. It should click in and you'll be able to move it around. So you can move it around in there. Make sure the cords are nice and neat. You can see in there, there's no problems. And it slides up and down. Stop it sliding up and down. Stick some tape on the ends. And there's two reasons to stick the tape on the end, because it's like water, this resin, to start with. It'll find a way out. So use that tape that they've got in the box to basically seal the ends up. And put it over both ends and it'll stop the cable moving around in there as well, because there's no clamp where you can clamp it or anything. So what I would do is put a lot of the insulation tape around the ends. And I don't care how tidy you are, make sure you fill it up inside of a box, especially if you don't want to get this crud all over the decking, because yeah, it stains your hands, it stains everything. So use the gloves as well. It comes with gloves, they're pretty pants, little thin things, but you can use them. And when opening up the bag, make sure not to split the resin bag, because that will be a nightmare. It'll go everywhere. So yeah, just open it up from the top, get it out, and you can see that there's two compartments inside this bag. So what you want to do is the middle bit, is basically whip it out. Don't cut it out, there's a little tube, you pull it out. And yeah, it might be a bit tough, so you've got to use a bit of pliers. But yeah, pull the tube out so it lets the two compounds inside the bag run together. And obviously, it don't just run together itself. You've got to give it a little bit of squeeze, because then it reacts together. It reacts, and then this is where it'll go hard. Not straight away, like a chemical reaction, but once, I don't know, give it 10, 15 minutes, it'll start going hard inside that tube once you start tipping it in. And I find this is the fun part of filling it up, because you know you're nearly done. Basically, fill it up nice and slowly. Let it spread out, let it get everywhere. You can't just blast it in, because it will just come out like a bleeding volcano. So just nice and slowly tip it in so it slowly fills up that whole resin joint. And fill it up right to the top of the cap. Before you put anything in, you'll see there's little lines at the top where it'll keep filling up. There'll be no bubbles in there as well, where it'll keep filling up right to the top, so you can obviously put the cap on. And there we go, cap on, fitted. Just let it dry for a little while now before putting it under the ground. And that is how you join a steel wire armour cable with a resin joint. I didn't even make a complete mess of this one.